Hold Your Breath, in a lot of ways, felt very similar to the recent Halle Berry movie Never Let Go, except it was executed much better. I couldn't help but notice the similarities between these two films when I was screening Hold Your Breath. It's a new movie starring Sarah Paulson. I watched it on Disney debut, so I'm not sure. Maybe it's coming to Disney Plus or Hulu. I don't remember. Sorry about that. It's going to premiere October, I think the 3rd, but I'm not 100% sure. The premise of the movie is, and it's an interesting premise to me because it's a different sort of setting than what I think a lot of us have seen in horror movies, because it's kind of like a horror suspense sort of film. Sarah Paulson's character and her daughters are, I think they're in Oklahoma. It's very flat land. It's very dry and dusty. This takes place in the 1930s. I thought the opening date was 1933. It's like in the middle of the dust storm and things are so bleak. It's very dry. There hasn't been rain. Her husband, the father of her kids, has gone away somewhere else to try to find work or whatever. And she is pretty much isolated with her children in their house in the middle of this flat land. She's not as totally isolated as the character of Halle Berry was in Never Let Go, because they live within a certain proximity to like a village where people live. I don't know if it's even categorized as a village. Everybody seems pretty spread apart, but they do come together and they have their little sewing parties or whatever and get-togethers and stuff like that. But it's a small community, small town, and she's quite isolated. There's a lot of dust storms that happen, and it wears on them. Right? It causes respiratory problems for some people, and there's just dust everywhere. Dust is a prevalent theme in this entire movie because it also ties in with something that is brought up multiple times called the gray man. And there's this whole story about the gray man and how he can disappear into dust and he can get inside you and make you do all these terrible things. And as the movie starts up, pretty early on in the film, you are informed that the mother has had an issue before with kind of like with her sanity, but it was directly linked to her lack of sleep after a terrible loss in the family, and she couldn't sleep, so it kind of drove her a little bit crazy. And so she has these sleeping pills that she takes. And then there's this strange person that comes to their area, and you are starting to wonder about him and supernatural possibilities going on, or is the mother losing her mind? Stuff like that. So in that way, it's very similar thematically to Never Let Go. Obviously, yes, there are certain differences, but things like isolation, questioning the sanity of the main character, the love of her children and doing whatever she can to protect them, not knowing who or what you can really trust, if you can even trust yourself, things like that. Oh, and also there's another part in here that is very similar to Never Let Go. Because of the terrible dust storms, whenever they have to leave the house to go out to, like, let's say if she needs to go across the area to where her barn is, she has to tie a rope around herself and tie the rope to the door of the house so she doesn't get lost in the storm, because that is also a recurring problem in the story. You see issues like that going on with some of the people that live in the area. So I was watching this and I'm like, wow, this is like Never Let Go. And then I was wondering, is it going to be any better? And I personally felt like it was better. There are a couple of cons, but overall, I like the way the story unfolded. I liked the character that Sarah Paulson played. She's a really good actor. I've always liked her ever since I started noticing her in, I think I first noticed her in Deadwood, and then I saw her. She also has recurring roles in American Horror Story. So she's really good at playing, or especially, let's say specifically in this movie, she plays this, she's this mother. She's alone with her kids. Her husband is away. She's scared of this environment. The dust is terrible. She's always worried about trying to clean the dust so it doesn't get in her kids' lungs and make them sick and stuff like that. And she's trying to be brave. She's trying to hold it all together. And yet she's very scared, and she starts to not even trust herself because of these different things that are going on. And so you can really feel for her. She's a very sympathetic character, or to me she was anyway. I felt really, really bad for her character. And the two actors who play her kids, they do a fine job. There's other people in this movie, the little side characters, but the core characters are her, Sarah Paulson, and her two kids. And this stuff that they are living through and trying to escape from, and the fear that's pervasive. The movie feels quite foreboding because you never know really what's going to happen. You know, it's something this is not going to be a happy family drama. In a lot of ways, this feels like a character drama more so than, let's say, a horror or suspense, even though there are elements of things like that in here. But a lot of this just feels like a really sad story of this mother who is alone in this horrible, harsh, almost wasteland of an area, and just trying to survive and cope with the fact that she doesn't have her support. Her husband's not there anymore, and she's just trying to protect her children from the terrible environment and potentially this scary invasive force that has come along. And I felt like that story was told very well. It worked for me on a level that Never Let Go didn't. That's why I can't help but compare these two, because just how similar they are thematically. There are a couple of things that I felt were cons. This movie is not awfully long. It's about an hour and 35 minutes. So obviously count credits, you're going to probably be seeing the end of this film by the 90-minute mark. It's a little bit shorter than Never Let Go, but some of the cons tie into the length of this film. Initially, I was feeling like that something I would put in the pro category was that this movie doesn't overstay its welcome, but some scenes felt a bit redundant. I mean, how many times do we need to see the mother realizing that maybe she's seeing things and the situation isn't quite what she thinks it is? This is something that is repeated multiple times, and after a while, I kind of felt like, okay, I get the point. You don't need to continue to show these repetitive types of scenes. That's one of the cons that I could think of. Another one is that by the time the movie is done, and I feel like it wrapped up pretty well, by the time you get to the end of it, it's pretty self-explanatory what's been going on. But at the same time, there were some things that were not fully explained, and I'm not sure if maybe it's just because it doesn't matter that it's not fully explored or explained or answered or whatever, or maybe if it was just something that was overlooked in the writing. I'm not quite sure. I'm curious to find out if there are any cut scenes maybe that go into a little bit more detail about some of the stuff that wasn't explained fully. It's not enough to hold me back from giving this a bit of a higher rating than I would give Never Let Go. Anyway, I'm fresh off of watching this. I just got done screening it probably about 10-15 minutes ago. So I wanted to just go ahead and get this review out of the way before I lost touch with the feelings that it generated in me. So for now, that's all I have to say about Hold Your Breath. Whenever it premieres, if you guys get a chance to check it out, I would like your input on some of these things that went unanswered. And I won't get into detail about that here to avoid spoilers in case you guys are interested to check it out. If you're a fan of Sarah Paulson, I would say it's probably worth checking out just for her. I mean, when I saw she was involved in this, I was automatically interested because I do like her acting and the premise looked intriguing. So I'm glad I got the chance to check it out, and I wanted to share my thoughts about it with you. And that's it for this one, you guys. I'll see you in the next video. Hasta luego.